welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really powerful framework from interrogation expert and, believe it or not, neuroscientist Chase Hughes on how you can make new habits actually stick for good.
So let's get right into it. We've all been there, right? We set these big, ambitious goals, and then, more often than not, they just crumble within a few weeks. Well, the source for this explainer says there's a really specific reason for this, and spoiler alert, it has nothing to do with a lack of willpower.
The core problem, it's an architectural one. See, we've all been taught to set our goals using the logical, planning, thinking part of our brain, but that's not the part that actually makes the decisions. The one in the driver's seat is our primal mammal brain.
So, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll get into why your willpower feels like it's always failing you. Then we'll walk through a step-by-step process to actually solve that problem for good.
Okay, let's start with the why. You know, most of us, we just blame ourselves. We think, oh, I'm just lazy, or I lack discipline. But the real issue, it's not a character flaw, it's actually a problem with the very structure of our brains.
And this slide right here, this is where it all starts to click. You've basically got two different brains running the show. Your thinking brain, that's your prefrontal cortex. It's the part that plans goals, uses language, and thinks about the future. But then you have your deciding brain, the limbic system. This part doesn't understand language. It just feels. It's only concerned with the present moment. They literally don't speak the same language.
And that's why this quote from Chase Hughes is so on point. It really changes everything. It means we have to stop trying to just motivate ourselves with logic and start asking a totally different question. How do I reprogram the system that actually decides what feels necessary?
So how do we do that reprogramming? This is where Hughes brings in a framework for change. Now, it's adapted from some pretty intense principles used in high-stakes intelligence work and even cult recruitment, but the idea here is to apply it for positive self-improvement.
You can think of this framework as a user manual, an operating manual for that deciding brain we just talked about. It's a way to finally speak its language, a language built on safety, emotion, and crucially, repetition.
Okay, let's get practical. The first couple of steps are all about programming your brain's filter. You're basically telling it, hey, you need to pay attention to this because it's super important for our survival.
And to get how that works, you have to know about something called the Reticular Activating System, or RAS. This thing is kind of like Google for your brain. It's sifting through millions of bits of information every single second, but it only shows you about 40 of them. And which 40 does it pick? The ones you've trained it to see as important.
This is exactly why step one is target acquisition. You have to give that search engine a super specific keyword. Vague goals like get fit are totally useless, but run a 5K in under 30 minutes? Now your brain has a precise target it can actually lock onto and start noticing opportunities to achieve. Then comes step two, threat modeling. And this is just brilliant. Why? Because our brains are wired way more for avoiding threats than for seeking pleasure. So you paint two really vivid pictures. One is your amazing desired future, but the other is the very real, uncomfortable, emotional cost of doing nothing. You make staying where you are feel unsafe.
Okay, if you only remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this next step. It's all about engineering your identity. See, most of us have it completely backward. We think that if we just do the new behavior, we'll eventually become the person we want to be. It's actually the reverse. Your identity runs the whole show.
This quote says it all. Your brain will violate logic before it violates identity. Just let that sink in for a second. If you see yourself as someone who isn't a morning person, your brain will invent a million logical-sounding reasons to hit snooze. Willpower feels so hard because you are literally in a constant battle with your own self-image. And guess who usually wins? So here's the tool to fix that, the identity protocol. You stop asking, how can I force myself to run? And you start asking, what kind of person considers running a non-negotiable part of their day? And then you literally write out their operating rules. What are 3 core beliefs they have, 3 daily behaviors, and 3 absolute non-negotiables? You're basically building your new avatar.
Okay, so you've designed this new version of you on paper. Now what? Well, the next few steps are all about making that identity real. We're going to lock it in through some pretty clever physical and psychological conditioning.
Step 4 is called environmental sabotage, and it's so powerful because context is almost always stronger than discipline. You have to deliberately shake things up. Seriously, move your furniture around. Change the route you take to work. Buy a few new pieces for your wardrobe.
This kind of novelty short-circuits your brain's comfortable autopilot and makes it wide open for new instructions. And this all ties back to a classic neuroscience concept. Neurons that fire together, wire together. But here's the part we almost always miss. It's not just about repetition. That's just noise to your brain. And a single big emotional event, that'll just fade over time. You absolutely need both. You need an emotionally charged signal that gets repeated over and over again. That's how you actually build a new neural pathway.
And that brings us to the final installation protocol. It's called the F.E.A.R. protocol, and it just wraps everything we've talked about together. F is for focus. You're constantly looking at your goals. E is for emotion. You're linking the new habits to powerful feelings. A is for agitation. That's the environmental disruption we talked about. And R is for repetition. You do it over and over. This is the code that writes the new program into your brain.
So after all of this, what's the end game? What does it actually feel like when this works? Well, the goal is for the need for discipline to just disappear entirely.
It's exactly this. It's when the new behavior stops feeling like something you do, and it starts feeling like who you are. It becomes your new default setting. In fact, going back to the old way would start to feel weird and uncomfortable. It would actually take effort. That's when you know you've really won.
So let's just quickly wrap up the key takeaways here. First, you've got to target the deciding brain, not the thinking one. Use that powerful contrast between what you want and what you fear to create urgency. Engineer your identity first, because your behavior will always follow your identity. Shake up your environment to break those old patterns. And finally, lock it all in with focus, emotion, agitation, and repetition. Failing isn't about being flawed. It's about finally having the right user manual for your own brain.
And that's a wrap on our explainer. I just want to leave you with one final, powerful question to think about. What is the one identity you could build for yourself that would make all of your other goals simply inevitable? Start there.